Episode 3. It knows you're awake. Ethan slept. That was the first mistake. He didn't mean to. He had stayed awake as long as he could, sitting upright on the bed with the lights on, phone in his hand, watching the seconds crawl forward. But exhaustion is patient. It waits until vigilance relaxes for a moment too long. When his eyes closed, it did not feel like sleep arriving. Felt like surrender. He woke to the sound of the fan. Not the steady hum he was used to, but something uneven, a subtle stutter woven into its rhythm. The room was dim, caught between night and early morning. For a moment, disorientation softened the fear, and he lay still, trying to remember what had pulled him back into consciousness. Then he saw the clock. 3:06 a.m. His chest tightened instantly. He reached for his phone. The screen lit up too easily, as if it had been waiting for him to touch it. No notifications, no messages, no warning. That was worse. Ethan sat up slowly, every movement deliberate. The room felt normal. The air was light. The fan turned without resistance. For a brief, dangerous second, hope crept in. Maybe nothing would happen tonight. The second hand reached the top of the clock face. 3:07. Nothing stopped. No freezing. No silence. No pressure. Instead, something shifted. The air seemed to settle, as if the room had accepted a new condition. Ethan felt it immediately, a subtle awareness at the edges of his senses, like being in a room with someone who wasn't speaking. He swallowed. "I'm awake," he said softly, testing the sound. The word lingered in the air longer than it should have. The fan slowed, not stopped, slowed as if listening. The phone vibrated once, not with a message, with acknowledgement. Ethan didn't look at the screen immediately. He felt certain that whatever waited there did not require his attention to remain aware of him. When he finally turned the phone over, the display was already lit. No text, just the camera view. The front-facing camera was on. Ethan stared at his own face on the screen, pale and tense in the dim light. For a heartbeat he felt foolish, paranoid, overtired. Then he noticed something behind him. The image lagged slightly, just enough to be noticeable. When Ethan turned his head, his reflection followed a fraction of a second too late. The delay was subtle, but unmistakable. Time wasn't pausing anymore. It was desynchronizing. The phone screen dimmed. Text appeared slowly, without vibration. "You slept." Ethan's breath caught. "I didn't mean to," he whispered. The reply came after a pause. "Intent is irrelevant." The room felt smaller, not compressed but occupied. Ethan sensed a focus narrowing around him, like a lens being adjusted. Another line appeared. "You wake too often at the wrong moment." Ethan clenched his jaw. What happens now? This time the pause was longer. Long enough to feel deliberate. "Now we stay closer." The fan resumed its normal speed. The phone screen went dark. The clock moved forward. 3:08 a.m. Everything appeared normal. Nothing felt safe. The following day unfolded with a brittle tension that clung to Ethan wherever he went. He felt watched even in crowds, a sensation that didn't fade when he turned corners or entered classrooms. Time behaved, but only barely, like something maintaining discipline through effort. In history class, the teacher paused mid-lecture, eyes unfocused, before continuing without comment. In the hallway, two students collided because one of them swore the other hadn't been there a second earlier. People laughed it off. Ethan didn't. He found Claire sitting alone near the courtyard, her backpack untouched at her feet. "You slept," she said as soon as she saw him. He stopped. "How did you?" "I felt it," she said. "Something changed last night." Ethan sat beside her. The air between them felt charged, as if conversation itself might trigger something else. "It didn't freeze," Claire continued. "Nothing obvious. But I woke up at 3:12 with this feeling like something had leaned closer." Ethan nodded. "It knows." Claire turned to him sharply. "What do you mean it knows?" "That we're awake," Ethan said. "That we're trying." She stared at him. Trying to what? Ethan didn't answer, because he didn't know anymore. That evening the city behaved strangely. Not dramatically, unevenly. Streetlights flickered out of sequence. Traffic flowed in short bursts, as if released in waves rather than continuously. A digital billboard glitched, replaying the same advertisement twice before skipping ahead. Ethan walked home faster than usual, a growing certainty pressing against his ribs. Time wasn't hiding anymore. It was adapting. At home, he didn't turn on the lights immediately. He stood in the doorway of his room, listening, sensing the space before entering. The fan was off. The clock ticked steadily. He stepped inside. The door closed behind him without sound. Not slammed. Not clicked. Closed. Ethan turned slowly. Nothing was there, but the room felt settled, as if something had been waiting for him to arrive. He sat on the bed without removing his jacket, phone in hand, heart racing as the evening stretched toward night. He didn't set alarms this time. He didn't arrange clocks. He didn't want to provoke anything. Midnight passed. 1 o'clock. 2. 3:05. He was still awake. The fan turned on by itself. Ethan didn't move. 3:06. The clock hesitated, not stopping, but wavering, as if unsure whether to proceed. Then a sound reached him. Not from the room. From inside his head. Not a voice. Pressure. A presence that didn't speak in words but in certainty. "You're doing this on purpose now," Ethan whispered. "I just want to understand." The pressure deepened. Understanding is not your function. The phone vibrated in his hand, though no message appeared. The screen showed only the time. 3:07. The minute arrived without resistance. The room did not freeze. Instead, the shadows deepened. Ethan felt something unmistakable then. Not fear, not confusion, but proximity. Time was not acting around him anymore. It was acting with him in mind. Another sensation followed. Not attention, recognition. And with it came a realization so sharp it made his breath hitch. This wasn't happening only to him. The minute collapsed. 3:08. The fan returned to its usual rhythm. Ethan exhaled shakily and looked down at his phone. A new message waited. Unknown number. "You weren't the only one awake." Ethan's pulse spiked. "Who else?" He typed. The reply came instantly. Someone else felt it. Outside his window, a distant siren rose and fell, slightly out of sync with the night around it. Ethan stared at the screen, the weight of the message settling into him. The hunt had widened. Ethan did not respond to the message. He sat on the edge of his bed with the phone resting loosely in his hand, the words still glowing on the screen. Someone else felt it. The sentence was simple, almost careless. That frightened him more than any threat could have. It meant what he had suspected was no longer theoretical. Whatever had noticed him had widened its focus. Awareness, once isolated, had begun to spread. The fan continued its steady rhythm above him. The clock ticked forward obediently. The room looked unchanged. Ethan knew better now than to trust appearances. He placed the phone face down and waited, listening not for sound but for absence. Nothing happened. The night resumed its ordinary shape, and for a moment he wondered if that was the most dangerous thing of all. The following morning carried a quiet tension that did not belong to him alone. Ethan noticed it in the way people moved, more cautiously than usual, as if the day had developed sharp edges overnight. A woman on the bus stared too long at the digital display above the driver. A man checked his watch repeatedly, frowning each time as though it disagreed with him. At school, whispers traveled faster than news. Someone in the science wing swore the lights had gone out for exactly 1 minute during a lab. Another student claimed they'd lost track of time entirely during a test, coming back to awareness with half a page already filled in their handwriting. Excuses, rationalizations. but the fear beneath them was real. Claire found Ethan near the stairwell between classes. She didn't speak immediately. She just stood there watching students pass, her jaw tight. "I think I know who it is," she said finally. Ethan turned. "Who?" "The other one," she said. "The one who felt it." He waited. "There's a guy in my math class," she continued. "Lucas. He hasn't said anything directly, but he keeps checking the clock like it's lying to him. Yesterday, he asked the teacher what time it should be." Ethan felt a chill. "Did anything happen to him?" Claire shook her head. "Not that I know of, but I saw his hands shaking." They stood in silence for a moment, the hum of the building filling the space between them. "If someone else is noticing," Ethan said slowly, "then it's not just watching us anymore." Claire met his eyes. "Then it's choosing." That night, Ethan stayed awake without effort. Sleep did not approach him gently. It hovered at the edges of his awareness, testing his resolve, retreating each time he shifted position. The clock moved steadily toward the hour, and for the first time, Ethan didn't feel anticipation. He felt certainty. 3:04, the house was quiet. At 3:05, the fan slowed slightly. At 3:06, the air grew heavy, as if charged. Ethan sat upright, phone in hand, breath shallow. 3:07 arrived without drama. No freeze, no silence, no distortion. Instead, the sensation returned. The same subtle presence he had felt before, closer now, more familiar. Not hostile, not gentle, attentive. Ethan closed his eyes briefly, then opened them again. The room remained intact, but something had shifted. The shadows along the walls felt deeper, as if they had gained weight. "You're here," he said quietly. The presence did not answer in words. It didn't need to. Ethan felt a pressure behind his eyes, not painful, but insistent, like a question waiting to be acknowledged. He thought of Lucas, of Claire, of the crossed-out names on the list. "Why him?" Ethan asked. The pressure changed. Not stronger, focused. Ethan understood then that the question itself had been incorrect. It wasn't why him. It was why now. The minute ended. 3:08. The fan resumed its normal rhythm. The room released its breath. Ethan leaned back against the wall, exhausted, his mind racing with implications he didn't yet know how to shape. The next day, Lucas didn't come to school. No announcement explained his absence. No teacher mentioned his name. It was as if he had simply failed to appear. Claire noticed before Ethan did. "He's not here," she said quietly during lunch. "I asked around. No one's heard from him." Ethan felt his stomach drop. "That doesn't mean anything," he said, though the words felt weak even as he spoke them. Claire looked at him. "It might." That afternoon, Ethan's phone vibrated for the first time since the previous night. A known number. No greeting. Just coordinates. A location on the edge of the city, near an old pedestrian bridge that crossed a dry canal. Another message followed. He went there to be sure. Ethan stared at the screen. Sure of what? He typed. The reply came after a pause long enough to feel deliberate. That he wasn't alone. Ethan stood beneath the bridge just before sunset. The air smelled of dust and rust. Traffic passed overhead, oblivious. The canal below was empty, its concrete walls marked with faded graffiti and old water lines. Claire stood beside him, arms crossed tightly. "This feels like a mistake," she said. Ethan nodded. "I think it's supposed to." They waited. Minutes passed. Nothing happened. Then Ethan felt it. The same subtle shift, the same awareness pressing in from the edges of his senses. Claire stiffened beside him. "You feel that?" she whispered. "Yes." A figure stood beneath the bridge. Not suddenly, not appearing, just present. Lucas looked thinner than Ethan remembered, his posture rigid, his eyes fixed on the ground in front of him. He didn't seem surprised to see them. "I thought it would be you," he said. Claire stepped forward. "What happened to you?" Lucas laughed softly, a sound without humor. "I woke up," he said, "at the wrong time." Ethan felt the presence settle around them, closer now, heavier. "What does it want?" Ethan asked. Lucas looked up at him, eyes wide and tired. "It doesn't want," he said. "It notices." The air thickened. Ethan felt the pressure behind his eyes intensify, sharper now, more insistent. Claire grabbed his arm, her grip tight. "Lucas," she said urgently, "we should go." Lucas shook his head. "It's too late for me." The presence focused. Not on Ethan, not on Claire, on Lucas. Ethan felt it then, the unmistakable narrowing of attention, the way the world seemed to tilt slightly toward one point. Lucas straightened, his expression calm in a way that felt deeply wrong. "It knows I stayed awake on purpose," he said, "and it doesn't like witnesses." The air trembled. Ethan stepped forward instinctively. "You don't have to." The minute arrived. Not at 3:07. At sunset. Time did not freeze. Folded. Lucas was gone. No sound. No movement. No distortion. One moment he stood beneath the bridge. The next he didn't. The presence withdrew, leaving behind a silence that felt too clean, too complete. Claire's breath came in short, panicked bursts. Ethan stood frozen, heart pounding, staring at the empty space where Lucas had been. This time there would be no crossed-out name, because now they had seen what that meant. That night, Ethan did not wait for the hour. He sat awake, lights on, phone untouched, knowing the difference no longer mattered. The presence did not require the minute to announce itself anymore. 3:06, the clock hesitated. 3:07, nothing happened. Instead, the phone screen lit up with a single line of text. "You understand now." Ethan didn't reply. Another line appeared. Someone else felt it. "Now you know what happens next." The fan slowed. The shadows deepened. And Ethan realized the truth he had been avoiding. The hunt was no longer about noticing time. It was about deciding who was allowed to keep remembering.